Once we get beyond the autotrophic, heterotrophic forms, or I should say once we get within the heterotrophic forms, we can then further classify these heterotrophic organisms as either being parasite or saprophyte. Well, what does it mean if an organism is a parasite versus an organism being a saprophyte? Saprophytes, we'll discuss those first. Those are organisms which are going to obtain this carbon from dead and decaying organic material. So I think you can see from that definition that the saprophytic types of heterotrophic organisms are going to be ones that are primarily involved in breaking down that animal or plant residue, which is a major portion, at least initially, of that organic material that goes into the soil. Now, if this organism is classified as a parasitic organism, then of course it's not living off of dead and decaying material, but it's living off of a living host. That's what makes something a parasite. It depends upon a living host. Well, I think you can see that if we're looking at this unit from the standpoint of the organic material in the soil and the breakdown and release of nutrients from that material, then it would be the saprophytic organisms that are the primary decomposers that are mainly involved in this process. But I think it's also important for us to understand that there are parasitic organisms that are a part of this organic fraction in the soil, and certainly one case would be the parasitic type of organism that is going to attack our plant, our crop plant, and perhaps cause some form of disease. Could be a root disease, could be a foliar disease, or whatever, but it's living in the soil and it's dependent upon a living host, at least during part of its life cycle. Now, many of these organisms are kind of interesting because they can be a saprophyte during part of their life cycle and a parasite during yet another stage or part in their development or life cycle as they go through that process. So disease-causing organisms cannot be parasites when a host plant is not available. Therefore, they must revert into a saprophytic form, live on dead and decaying organic material, perhaps residue from the crop itself, for a period of time while that crop or while those living plants are not available to them in that soil environment. So now we have a basic understanding of heterotrophic versus autotrophic, and we also have an understanding of, within the heterotrophic group, what the difference would be between an organism which is a saprophyte versus one which is a parasite. So with that introduction, I would like to look next at these specific groups of microorganisms, some of the characteristics of these groups, and how prevalent and or how important are they from the standpoint of this organic matter cycle in the soil.